Welcome to the telling of today's tale. The story I'm telling today is a coming here story. It's an ancient story. It's a story from the earliest time that people lived here on the Central Oregon coast. It's a story that we only know today because a man by the name of George Charley told it to Leo Frachtenberg, an ethnographer from the University of Washington who recorded these stories in the early 20th century when there were still speakers of the Alsea language alive. And this is the story that Mr. Charley told. I tell this story with permission from the elders of the Confederated Tribes of the Siletz. And this is how it was. There was a time in the very long ago when there were no people, no two-legged people living here in this place. But there were many people who lived far to the south. Now the people who lived there far to the south, they had amongst their tribes dreamers. And the dreamers would dream of the things that were going to happen, and the people would listen to them. And the dreamers began to dream of the Creator. And the Creator was telling them that they must get all of the people gathered in one place. The Creator would then tell them what it is they needed to do. And so it was, the people began to gather. At first just a few people, and then more, until finally there were enough people to play shinny ball. Well, shinny ball. Do you know what shinny ball is? The modern version of shinny ball is what we call lacrosse. It's a game that has been played by the native peoples in North America for time out of mind. And it's a game that here in this place was played with a ball made of a spruce root that was wrapped in wet deer or elk hide. And the hide was made to dry until it was very tight around the spruce root, making a ball that could be hit with sticks. And the people would try to hit that ball into a goal at one end of the field or a goal at the other end. That was shinny ball. And there were enough people gathered in this place to play shinny ball. And they would tell stories, and they would have dances, they would play the guessing game, they would eat, until finally all of the people were in that place. And when that happened, the Creator came to them. And they said, "Why? Creator, why have you brought us all to this place?" Ah, the Creator told them, "I have come to tell you that this man and this woman, this husband and this wife, will go to live on the shores of the Yaquina River, as will their children, their children's children, and their children. And in the spring, they will dig roots for food. In the summer, they will go into the mountains and pick berries and dig camas. In the fall, they will harvest the salmon swimming up that river. And in the winter, they will gather and visit amongst themselves. They will play shinny ball and dance and tell stories and play the guessing game. And they will visit with those people whose language they share, this man and this woman, this husband and this wife, who will go to live on the shores of the Alsea River, as will their children, their children's children, and their children. And in the spring, they will dig the roots. In the summer, they will go into the mountains to pick berries and dig camas. In the fall, they will harvest the salmon swimming up the river. And in the winters, they will gather to dance, to tell stories, to play shinny ball and the guessing game. And they will visit with one another, and they will visit with those whose language they share, this man and this woman, this husband and this wife, who will go to live on the shores of the Yahats River, as will their children, their children's children, and their children. And in the spring, they will dig the roots. In the summer, they will go into the mountains to pick the berries and dig camas. In the fall, they will harvest the salmon. And in the winter, yes, they will gather together to dance, to tell stories, to play games, and they will visit with one another. And they will visit with the people whose language they understand, this man and this woman, this husband and this wife, who will go to live on the shores of the Siuslaw River, as will their children, their children's children, and their children. And in the spring, they will dig roots. In the summer, they will go into the mountains to pick berries and dig for camas. And in the fall, they will harvest the salmon swimming up that river. In the winter, they gather to sing, to dance, to tell stories, to play games, to visit with one another, and with these people whose language they share, this man and this woman, this husband and this wife, who will go to live on the shores of the Umpqua River, as will their children, their children's children, and their children. And in the spring, they will dig for roots. In the summer, they will go into the mountains to pick berries and to dig camas. In the fall, they will harvest the salmon swimming up the river. And in the winter, they will gather together to dance, to sing, to tell stories, to play games, and to visit with all of the people whose language they share, whose language they understand. And thus it was so. People came to these 5 rivers here on the Central Oregon coast. And life was very good for them. They had listened to the Creator. They did as they knew He wanted them to do. Now, amongst these people still were the dreamers. And the dreamers began having dreams of a time when the ocean would fall out of its place and cover the mountains around here. The dreamers told the people of this time to come, although it was very far distant, and the people listened. As time passed, the dreams continued, and the dreamers knew that time was getting closer, and they dreamed of the signs they needed to look for. They knew that when the earth began to shake, when the ocean went so far out past the horizon it couldn't be seen anymore, that was the time when the people needed to leave the beaches and the hills on the beach. They needed to go far into the mountains to be safe. The people knew this. And so when that time came, when the earth began to shake, when the ocean went far out to the horizon and could not be seen anymore, the people turned to the east and they fled to the mountains as fast as they could. Because indeed, the ocean fell out of its place and it covered the hills around here. It was very, very deep. The waters finally receded and the people returned to the rivers of the Yaquina, the Alsea, the Yahats, the Sayusla, the Umpqua. And they continued with their lives, in the spring digging roots, in the summer going into the mountains to pick berries and dig camas. In the fall, they would harvest the salmon swimming up the rivers. And in the winter, they would gather all up and down the rivers to play shinny ball, to sing and dance and tell stories, to play the guessing game. And thus it was so. Now, that story has lasted for time out of mind because it's a story that was told to the people so they would be ready. We now know, with archaeologists, with those people who recorded a tsunami in Japan on January 26th, 1700, that it did indeed happen that the ocean fell out of its place. The people were told what to look for to know when that would happen. And now you have been told. Thank you for listening to this story.